Hey, welcome to the Yarn on Yarns YouTube channel. My name is Angela. All the places you can find me online should be linked in the description blocks below. I'm most active on Instagram, where you'll find me as Rainbow Ange and Yarn on Yarns. This is a little bit of a bonus episode this week. I am taking 4 days off of work for the Easter weekend, and I am planning a cast on party. So I am winding up lots of yarn, and I'm going to cast on as many things as I can this weekend. I know that's crazy because I also have a lot of whips already on the needles, but I have been feeling the urge to cast on really strongly over the last few weeks. So I've been busy finishing up as many things as I can to give myself the freedom to do whatever I like this weekend. So at the moment I have plans to cast on 2, maybe 3 pairs of socks, 2 shawls, a sweater and a hat. I know that's slightly bonkers, but it makes me happy, and yeah, what is life if you can't bring yourself a little bit of happiness every now and then? So I'm in the middle of winding up all of the yarn that I need. I'm going to show you a little quick clip of my winding station. It's a bit of a mess at the moment, as you can imagine. There are yarns everywhere. But I'll pop back at various points just to talk to you a little bit more about the projects that I'll be casting on and the yarns that I'm going to be using. It's Friday afternoon and I have almost finished winding all of the yarns that I'm hoping to get on the needles this weekend. James and I have been out for some brunch. It's a beautiful day here in South Wales. The sun is shining and there are gorgeous blue skies out there. It makes a nice change for a bank holiday weekend here in the UK, because you can usually guarantee rain. So yeah, we've been out and had a fun start to our weekend. I've done a few chores around the house, and so I pretty much have the rest of the day to do what I want. James and I are planning on doing a little bit of baking later on, so that will be nice. And so we've got some nice treats for the rest of the weekend. But I'm going to spend some time now casting on the first project on my list of things that I'd like to get on the needles this afternoon. Before I do that, I'm just going to show you a quick shot of all of the yarns that I have wound up, and they're all piled up ready to go. There's only one that I haven't yet wound, but it's still over there in the pile. It's some handspun yarn that I'm planning on starting a shawl with, and before I actually wind that up, I just want to calculate how many meters of yarn that I've got. So I think I'll save that for later in the weekend, because I'm anxious now I've spent some time winding to actually get to working on something. So yeah, look at this big pile of yarn ready to go. So in the basket on the top, there are yarns for potentially 3 pairs of socks, and also the gorgeous John Arbon yarn that Luli sent me for a hat. This little pile here down in the corner is going to become a sweater, and then these 2 over here will hopefully be becoming shawls. But I will talk to you a little bit more in detail about the yarns and the projects as I get to cast them on. So the project that I'm going to work on today, as I should have a fair few hours to knit today, I thought I'd start on the biggest project, which is a sweater. And this is not the sweater that I was planning on starting, but I'll talk a little bit more about that in my main episode that I'm going to be recording this week, which I'll actually be recording after this section, but it will go up on YouTube before. So if you watch that one, then you'll have heard how my initial plan was a bit of a failure. Instead, I had a search through Ravelry and decided that I would have a go at knitting a Nordiska, I think it's called, sweater by Caitlin Hunter, to use the yarn that I had purchased a little while ago. And the yarn in question is this lovely yarn from local indie dyer here, Miranda. Her yarn line is called By Miranda May, and I picked up 3 skeins of this gorgeous Purple Moon colourway. The light is going to be a bit strange because of the bright sunshine, I do apologise, but it's this lovely deep purple. It's not too dissimilar actually to the purple that I knit my violet cap in that I like so much, but this yarn also has shots of blue through it and some more sort of aubergine purples, as well as the deep sort of plummy purples. And my original plan for this sweater has not come to fruition, as I mentioned, but I really wanted to, initially I was quite disappointed, but I really want to use this yarn, so I picked out a Nordiska instead. I did a little bit of swatching, not for gauge but for my colour choices. After the experience with the previous sweater, I thought it would be a good idea just to have a play around, and I'm glad that I did. So I have, if you've seen the sweater, it's an oversized sort of crop sweater with a little bit of colour work around the bottom. So I decided to swatch a little bit of the colour work panel, as I say, to see how my colours will play together. So alongside the By Miranda May yarn, I also raided my stash and I have picked out a 50-gram skein that I had of another local dyer who is called the Old Piggery, and this colour is her Flame colourway. This is a 75-25 base too, and this has got lovely sort of oranges and browns and a little bit more sort of on the yellow side. And then the third colour, you need 3 colours for the Nordiska, is another skein that I had in my stash, and this is from the lovely Antler and Acorn, who is a dyer here in the UK, and this is her BFL High Twist sock base, which is 80% superwash blue face Leicester, 20% nylon, so that's Antler and Acorn, and this is the Dawn Skies colourway. So I decided to have a go at playing with the colours and see how they went. So I cast on down here. This swatch is a little bit teeny tiny, it's only 20 stitches wide, but as I say, it was just designed to have a look to see how the colours played together. So I start down here, and I really like how the sort of deep purple is playing with the Dawn Skies colourway from Antler and Acorn, and then we go into the Flame colourway. Now, after I'd done my first little section here, because there are some spots of orange in the Antler and Acorn, it's sort of muddied a little bit with the Old Piggery yarn, and I really liked it because I feel like this is quite a watercolory sort of effect, but you can't really see those sort of this little part of the colourwork pattern as clearly as you might otherwise. So I thought I picked out another little bit of leftover that I had in my stash, this really bright orange, which is from the Periwinkle Sheep, and this is leftover from my Amulet shawl. This was a yarn that James brought me back as a gift from a work trip that he went on to in the Seattle a couple of years ago. So I carried on sort of with my 2 colours, and I really enjoy the play between those 2 for that section, and then I decided to swap in the Periwinkle Sheep at the top here. And while yes, it is true, you can see obviously that colourwork pattern a lot more easily against the Antler and Acorn, I don't really like that starkness. I actually much prefer this end. So whilst my the definition of some of the colour work might disappear, I have decided to go with this as my colour choice for the Nordiska. So I am going to be casting on. My one remaining question mark is how this colourway is going to look in the main part of the sweater. I'm going to be alternating skeins. I have knit with this yarn before, although a different dye batch. I made a pair of socks for one of my friends from this, and it had a really nice variegated knit up to it, but as I say, that was some much shorter rows and a different dye batch, so I might need to play around to see with what looks best in terms of alternating colours for the main body of the sweater, but that's what comes first. The colour work is a top-down sweater, so you don't get into the colour work till much later. So yeah, that is what I'm off to do now, and I'm sure I will report back on my progress soon. It's Saturday morning now, and I thought I'd pop in to show you the progress that I made on my Nordiska yesterday. It doesn't look like a lot of knitting, but this does actually represent quite a number of hours that I got to spend knitting yesterday. But of course this is a fingering weight 4-ply sweater, so it's not going to grow very quickly. So here is my progress so far. So as you can see, I've knit a fair few inches of the top of the garment. The garment's knit top down. You start out flat, and then after you've done so many raglan increases, you join to knit in the round. And yeah, I'm really pleased with how this yarn is working up. The light again is very bright here today, so it's probably not the best for showing you how this colour is progressing, particularly as this is knit at a really loose gauge as well, so the light's just sort of shining through. But as you can see, the colours are working up in a nice sort of variegated manner. I've decided to knit the top bit, the flat bit, in just a skein of the yarn, and then once I get to join in the round, I will alternate skeins. I've got about 12 more rows to go before I join to knit in the round, but this is going to go away for a little while now because I have other things to cast on today. But yeah, there's not too much else to say about this. 3.5mm needles. I've got a pair of Zings that I had hanging around, so they are being used for this project, and I'm going to keep the project in a big bag that I made myself a little while ago. This bag is actually probably a little bit too big for this project. I've got 3 skeins of this yarn, and then I will also I've got the Antler and Acorn, and then the old Piggery sort of half skein in there too, but there's still plenty of room in there. But it does need a nice big bag to keep all of those yarns together. So yeah, I'm really happy with my first day of my cast on party. From here on in, the projects are a little bit smaller, so I've got shawls and hats and socks, so I'm going to probably cast on 2 a day for the next 3 days while I am on my little break from work. Heading into Cardiff today, Miranda, who is a dyer behind by Miranda May, that lovely purple yarn that I'm using in my Nordiska, is having a stand at a local craft fair for the first time this weekend, so I thought I might pop down and check that out and give her a little bit of a support. And then James is going to come into Cardiff and meet me, and we're going to go to the cinema and grab some lunch. So there won't be too much knitting time today, but I am planning on casting on a pair of socks, and these are yarns that I've had in my stash for a while. This opal yarn, which will be the one of the yarns that feature in this pair of socks, is the yarn that I pulled out as my March yarn from my mystery bags of commercial sock yarn that I'm trying to work my way through this year. And I'm going to pair this with a ball of Wendy Rome for a pair of socks by Stone Knits called the Zigzag socks. These came to my attention through Denise, who is Earth Tones Girl. She has a lovely video channel here on YouTube. She was knitting up a pair of these socks and I really liked them. They're simple colour work pattern. I'm unsure as to whether this is a high enough contrast, but I think I will be okay with it, even if it's just a low contrast. I think the patterning will hopefully show up using this sort of opal yarn to create sort of like a gradient in the pattern of the colour work as we go through. So yeah, but this is going to be my first cast on for the day. I'm going to take this with me on the train and get the cuff started as I'm travelling into Cardiff. And yeah, no doubt I'll be back later to show you what progress I made. Been a couple of days since we last talked, and my cast on party has fizzled out a little bit. I have not been feeling the best, so my energy has been quite low. I have managed to get a couple of things cast on, but I haven't recorded as I had wanted to chat to you about their progress. So I'm going to show you the 3 things that I've cast on since we last spoke. But yeah, my apologies, this video is not as dynamic as I had originally hoped that it would be. We last spoke, even though I haven't felt like knitting a ton, I have cast on 3 projects. I've got a couple of pairs of socks and a shawl to show you today. So I'll start where I left off with you on Saturday morning. I was planning on casting on a pair of zigzag socks, which is a pattern by Stone Knits, who I believe is Charlotte Stone, although I may be wrong on that. And I picked out a couple of yarns from my stash for this. One is some Wendy Rome, which is this sort of lovely tonal lilac colour with some shots of sort of more blues and then some more sort of pinky tones. Doesn't show up to its best on my phone camera. And then I am pairing that with a lovely skein of opal yarn. So the contrast is fairly low, but I am relatively pleased with how this is working up in the sock. I've only done a couple of pattern repeats, and here are my results so far. So yeah, I think you can see that lovely sort of patterning effect of the zigzag, and yeah, I'm pleased with the low contrast. It's something a little bit more, I'll show you the other side as well, because the colours are playing slightly differently. Slightly more delicate than I often go for on my socks, but I'm really happy with how this is playing out. I've decided to go for the largest size. I have had issues with trying to get colour work socks to fit in the past. Obviously stranding the yarns makes it a bit less stretchy than ordinarily you would get from a knitted fabric, but I'm trying to keep my floats relatively loose. I've gone up a needle size for the colour work, and as I say, I'm doing a higher stitch count than I often would. So I cast on with my usual 2.25mm 2.25mm needles, and I cast on 68 stitches as recommended by the pattern, and then as you go into the colour work portion you increase up, so I think I might have 78 stitches on the needles now. I haven't tried it on yet. It looks a little big, but I think it will be fine, and I think I'll need that extra room to sort of compensate for carrying those yarns on the inside. So yeah, that's the progress on my zigzag socks. And I'm going to be keeping those in this lovely, gorgeous mousse bag that my lovely friend and viewer Lydia sent me. I've spoken about that a couple of videos ago here on the channel. What a wonderful gift this bag was. So it's gone into use straight away, and I think it will be in rotation all the time because I love it so much. The second pair of socks that I've cast on is the Damson Gin pattern, and I forgot to remind myself who is the designer behind that, so I'll put that on the screen here below. This is a pattern which is part of a series inspired by Miss Marple, and I came across these patterns on Instagram, and they made me think of my lovely friend Erin, who I've spoken about here many times before, and I just fell in love with the bobbly texture on this particular pattern. As I say, it's called Damson Gin, and here is my progress so far. So I'm using some Wendy Rome yarn, and if this looks familiar, it is because I recently used it as the contrast heels, toes and cuffs on my Pebbles and Pathways socks. but I love this colour so much. It's quite a complex colour, mainly this sort of plummy purple, but there are hints of mustard and blues and the odd pop of red, and it's a really lovely sort of heathered look. And when I saw the Damson Gin, the original pair of socks on the picture, and it in a colour sort of in this sort of colour family, so every now and then you put in this really nice kind of bobbly texture on the sock, and this is going to be a really addictive knit, I can tell already. I'm itching to keep going because it's mostly just knit rows with the odd texture row thrown in, and you just want to get to the next texture and see that build up. So I'm pretty confident that these won't be on the needles for very long. I'm knitting those on my usual 2.25mm needles, and I'm keeping those in this TARDIS bag, which I showed off on a couple of episodes ago. This is perfect size for a pair of socks, one ball of yarn and a pair of needles fit in there really nicely. Yesterday I slept a lot, but I managed to get one project cast on, and because I'd slept quite a lot in the day, I stayed up a little bit later than I would usually have done, so I managed reasonable progress on this. This project is living in another mousse bag. This is my Frog Peak Creations Canadian mousses. I love this bag so much, and I've got loads of yarn crammed into this. It's quite a nice big size. It's not too dissimilar actually in size to the bag that Lydia made for me. Lydia's is slightly bigger. Maybe I should swap these over because this is a little bit of a tight squeeze in here. Maybe I'll do that afterwards. But I'm cast on a project from Interpretations Volume 6, which is the new book from Joji Locatelli and Vera Välimäki from Pom Pom Press. And I fell in love with the Evolve shawl, which is a 3-colour shawl. And obviously Joji's done hers in a sort of grey gradient, but I treated myself to a couple of skeins of yarn this week from a lovely dyer here in the UK called Handmade Over Yonder, and you can find her on Instagram as Tracy Priestley. I'll pop a link down below, and look at this gorgeous label that she has. Isn't that beautiful? She has been doing some naturally dyed yarns recently, and I fell in love with a couple of, well, more than a couple of colours, but I felt like I was reasonably restrained and picked myself up just 2 colours on her Corriedale base. So these are the colours that I've gone for. So this one is dyed with Madder, and this one is dyed with a really long name that I have, Chlorophyllin, I believe. Yeah, Chlorophyllin I'm going to go for. Probably, can you see that? Maybe it's not going to focus. But yes, these are 100% Corriedale high twist sock yarn. She is calling this base. Spun in Yorkshire, naturally hand dyed in Skipton, the gateway to the Yorkshire Dales. And Skipton in Old English means sheep settlement. So yeah, 100% Corriedale non-superwash sock. So those are the 2 colours that I purchased from Handmade Over Yonder. I wanted 3 colours, but I couldn't see another in her naturally dyed range that went exactly how I had envisioned. But in my stash I have this other skein of yarn from Hey Mama Wolf. Now I have misplaced the label, which is crazy because I've only just wound it up. It's going to be here somewhere. But this is another naturally dyed yarn, and this, it's not the same base, it's not Corriedale. I'm sure I'll find the information and I will mention it on a future episode as I make progress on this. But this was a lovely gift from my friend Sylvia. Sylvia gifted me this yarn a little while ago, and I thought this would look lovely with these other 2 naturally dyed skeins. This one's looking a bit smaller because when I cut off the ties I accidentally snipped through an extra strand, so I've ended up with 2 smaller balls of this. No fault of the dyer at all, it's my own clumsiness as I went to ball this up from the skein. So yeah, these are the 3 beautiful colours that I'm going to be using for my Evolve shawl. And I've started with that lovely corally orange, which is the yarn dyed from the madder, and I have managed to do one sort of pattern repeat on the first colour of the shawl so far. I was actually had a nice surprise when I started knitting this up, because it's not super clear in the photos that you get this kind of like mocked cable detail right from the end of the shawl. There are some beautiful photos of the shawl in the magazine, but you can't see, in none of the pictures can you see the very tip of that shawl. So yeah, it was kind of a nice surprise to get that sort of mock cabling pattern from the start. So yeah, that was my progress yesterday. This colour is just stunning, isn't it? This beautiful corally orange, and I think I'm bang on trend for the Pantone colour of the year, aren't I? Unlike me to be trendy. But I'm really looking forward to working through the rest of those beautiful colours and to see how that shawl turns out. Obviously that's quite a lot of knitting, so I'm sure that one will be on the needles for quite some time. So we're halfway through Monday and I've still got 3 projects that I was hoping to cast on this weekend. I'm not sure whether I'll get all 3 on the needles, probably not. So today I'm going to try and aim to get my last pair of socks on the needles, and I'm hoping to cast on this lovely West Yorkshire Spinners yarn that I've had in my stash for a little while. This beautiful rainbow coloured yarn. I think this might be from their Cocktails collection. I don't have the colourway name, but it's colour number 822. For anyone who is interested. So this is the West Yorkshire Spinners signature 4-ply, and I did have a knot in this ball, which is why I've ended up with 2 little balls, but I probably won't even get to touch this. I usually have plenty left over from my socks, so I'm going to work from this big ball and see where I get to. And I am casting on another pattern sock called the Darlicanium. I've knit these before. These are one of my first pairs of socks, and it was a pattern that was brought to my attention by Lisa, who is Use Your Yarn. I think I've mentioned Lisa before. And we both love Doctor Who. She pointed this pattern out to me, and I knit my original pair from some King Cole zigzag, and they're one of my most worn pair of socks, so I thought it was high time to cast on another pair. But I was looking for a yarn that had a fairly rapid colour change, because that's what the zigzag had knit up like, and the socks look really nice, the patterning looks really nice. So I found this West Yorkshire Spinners, which has got quite a thin stripe, so I'm hoping this will give me the effect that I want. And then as well as those socks, I'm hoping to get my Hilltop shawl on the needles from my handspun yarn. Sorry, it's really blowing out in the light. So this is my Llanwnog fibre that I've been spinning up, and the pattern is by Helen, who is Curious Handmade. So I need to wind those up. I haven't wound them up yet because I just want to keep track of how many meters of this yarn I am getting through, because I'm still in the process of spinning. So yeah, I'm hoping to get these 2 projects on the needles today, and then sadly I probably won't get round to the last of my planned cast-ons, which is a hat from the lovely Exmoor sock yarn that I was gifted by Lou Lee as a knit along prize recently. But that's okay, it will get on the needles, just not this weekend. Trying to take care of myself and doing a little bit of napping has been a little bit more important than getting all of the things cast on. But if I can manage to get these 2, I still, despite the fact that I haven't been as productive as I wanted, I'll still have managed to achieve quite a lot this weekend, so I can't be too unhappy with that. But I'll report back in the morning before I head off to work as to whether I got these on the needles and how much progress I made. We have reached the end of the lovely Easter weekend, and in about 20 minutes or so I have to head out to work. Back to the shop after 4 days off. Oh, I've really enjoyed it, but I'm looking forward to getting back into the swing of things as well. Managed to cast on 2 projects yesterday, my socks and a shawl. So before I round up this video, I'll just quickly show you those projects. The first is my socks, and I've put these in this gorgeous bag by Emma from Eldenwood Craft. I love Emma's bags, and this is perfect for a pair of socks or a shawl. And yeah, I just love this colourway. I purchased this from her at the Knit Tea retreat last year. So lots of lovely memories attached to this bag as well. So in here I have a pair of socks cast on from West Yorkshire Spinners yarn that I showed yesterday. Sorry about the light, it's very bright here again today. So it's a nice sort of rainbow colour yarn from West Yorkshire Spinners, and I've cast on a pair of Darlicanium socks, which is a lovely pattern which has a bit of a slip stitch detail. Now this is as far as I got, which is not horrendously far. As you can see, they're a toe up sock. This is my second pair of toe up socks this weekend. I don't know who I am, because I don't usually like doing toe up. I wanted to make both of these pairs of socks, and I think both would have been this one probably would have been a bit harder to convert to top down. The slip stitches would have been going the other way. Certainly the damson gin I could have converted to cuff down if I'd have really wanted to. It's always nice to do something a little bit different, isn't it? So this pair of socks I cast on the medium size originally, which is 68 stitches as recommended in the pattern, and then for this slip stitch pattern you actually increase up a few more stitches, and when I tried it on it was just way too big on my foot, so I went down to the smallest size for this pattern, which is a 60 stitch, and this is turning out to be much better. My slip stitch isn't working out exactly as I had hoped. Actually, I have got my other pair of Darlicanium socks on, so I'm going to take one of those off. It's only just gone on, so it's pretty clean, don't panic. So this is my original pair of Darlicanium, and as you can see the stripes change quite often, and that really shows up the slip stitch pattern, because the slip stitches are going over a colour that's different to them, if that makes sense. So down here it started working out okay, so I've got the yellow slip stitches going over the orange, and then the orange going over the pink, but as we've worked up, the stripe sequence means that it's kind of gone out again, so the purple is going over the purple, which you can still see it, but it's not really the what I had in my head. It's not really what I'd hoped for. So I think I'm going to carry on because I still like it, and this yarn is really fun. I'll show you the back, so the bottom of the foot. Isn't that gorgeous? I think what I actually need is some yarn that has irregular stripes. So for this, I'm going to show you the bottom of the foot. This is a very old sock, so you have to excuse the sort of messy felting, although it's holding up pretty well. But on the bottom of this sock you can see the striping is irregular, so there's a couple of sort of 4-row stripes, and then there's a 2, then there's a couple of colours where you just get 1 row of stripes, and I think that's the kind of thing I need to get this really nice effective slip stitch pattern. But as I say, I'm going to carry on because these are now on the needles, and I'm really enjoying working with the rainbow yarn. They're just not as I had imagined they would be, or I had hoped that they would be. But these things happen, don't they? And as I say, I'm still happy enough with them that I will carry on. Now the second project that I cast on yesterday, I am a little bit in love with. So I'm keeping this in my oyster catcher bag, which I made myself. It's a fabric from Poppy Treefy, who is a designer here in the UK, and I've cast on a hilltop shawl, which is a pattern by Helen Stewart, who is Curious Handmade, and I am knitting this from my Llanwenog fibre that I have been spinning up, and oh, this is such a joy to work on. It really is. I think this pattern is perfect for hand spun yarn. It's basically a garter shawl with a few really simple lace panels, and this is my progress so far. So yeah, as you can see, garter, lace, And yeah, it's just really simple, and I think it fits this yarn really well. This is obviously a natural coloured fibre. It's knitting up so buttery and so soft. Yeah, it's so squishy. I wish you could feel it, because yeah, as I say, it's just buttery is the word to use. Now, obviously my handspun is a little bit thick and thin. You can see some bumps and some ridges, but I think overall in this shawl it looks gorgeous, so I'm really happy, and this has got me really incentivized to start spinning up, or to keep going with the rest of my spinning. Obviously I have knit with my handspun before, for the little gnomes that I've been making, but this is a really different experience. It's just, yeah, it's a joy. It really is a joy. I don't think there's any other way to describe it. So yeah, this is not going to be the perfect shawl. As I say, there's lots of thick and thin bits in my yarn, but I think overall a nice garter stitch squish really suits handspun. So I am excited to continue. I've got this little ball left, and I still have another quite a big hank to wind up and get knitting, so I've still got a little bit of knitting to do. The rows are getting fairly long now. So far I have used up, when I get to the end of this, it will be 60 or so meters that I've put into this shawl. The first, I've had two little bumps have gone into this so far. The first one was definitely a little bit thinner. This one here is more of a DK weight, I would say, than a fingering weight, but as I say, in the overall shawl, the inconsistency I don't think really matters, and yeah, I'm excited to carry on with this project. I'm knitting those on 3.75mm needles. The pattern recommends a 4mm needle, but I thought I'd go down because I am generally a bit of a looser knitter, and also as I'm working with my handspun, there'll be bits that are quite thin and some bits that are a bit thicker, and I thought that maybe going down a needle size would just suit the yarn a little bit better. And obviously for a shawl it doesn't really matter, you're not working to get a specific size in terms of fit, as long as it goes around my neck, then job done. But Helen's patterns are always really adaptable. She tells you throughout the pattern how much yarn you will have used as a percentage of the overall design. So that's really helpful, and with these garter stitch panels, it's a really simple increase, and as I say, the lace pattern is also really simple, so I'm pretty sure that if I needed to add in some extra sections to compensate for my yarn being a bit thicker in places, then I will absolutely be able to do that, no problem. So yeah, I've come to the end of my cast on party. As I mentioned yesterday, it didn't quite work out as I had hoped. I'm still not feeling brilliant today. I did not sleep very well. So sadly, after 4 days off, I am not really feeling that refreshed. But that's okay. I will just get through the day and hopefully get an early night tonight and catch up on some of the sleep that I missed out on last night. I hope that you have somewhat enjoyed the video. Obviously, if you have, I always love to hear from you. Even if you haven't, I love to hear from you. It's always nice to get a little bit of feedback. If you have time, then please leave a comment below. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel but you've been enjoying the videos, then please do. And hopefully I will see you again soon. I hope that you get to do some of the things that you enjoy, and until next time, great big woolly hugs to you all. Bye for now.